I've learned that sometimes the body isn't reacting to stress, it's reacting to truth. Truth my mind was negotiating with. Truth I kept calling just a rough season. And eventually, my body stopped cooperating. My nervous system no longer agreed with the role, the rhythm, the identity I was living inside of. Instead of feeling motivated, I was tired. Instead of having clarity, I was anxious. And instead of the I can push through script I was running in my mind, my body started applying the brakes. If you're here, I want to start by saying this. What you're feeling is real. There's a very specific experience that happens when your life functions, but you don't. When you're responsible and capable and reliable, but internally disconnected from yourself. For me, this was the moment that I realized I'm not falling apart, I'm outgrowing something. And that realization didn't feel empowering at first. It was confusing and unsettling. It felt like I was keeping a promise that I no longer recognized. But what I now understand, both personally and therapeutically, is that my nervous system wasn't breaking down. My body didn't wait for permission to tell the truth. Before I had the language for it, it showed up as the heaviness when the day started, as a subtle dread before certain conversations, emotional numbness where excitement used to live, irritability that felt out of character, exhaustion that rest did not even touch. These weren't random symptoms. These were signals. From a therapeutic lens, this is what happens when the system has been tolerating misalignment longer than it was meant to. The body tracks safety, meaning, and authenticity before the mind can justify staying. So when my body started resisting a life I was still showing up for, it wasn't betraying me, it was protecting me. This is where I stayed stuck for too long because nothing was obviously wrong. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was meeting expectations. In some ways, I was exceeding those expectations. So I kept telling myself, I should be grateful. I can handle this. But clinically, this is what I now understand. Burnout rarely happens all at once. It happens in cycles. So I pushed, I overrode my body, I got through the week, I crashed, I recovered just enough to do it all over again. And over time, that cycle taught my nervous system that rest was temporary and that survival was the baseline. That's why this kind of burnout feels so confusing. I wasn't collapsed, I was high functioning, but internally depleted. And no amount of pushing was going to resolve a cycle that required me to stop and listen. When my body kept signaling discomfort and my life kept demanding compliance, I did what a lot of us do. I turned that conflict inward. So I started questioning myself, not just my choices, but me as a whole, my character. Like, why am I like this? Why can't I just push through? Why does this feel harder for me than it seems for everybody else? From a therapeutic standpoint, this is often where childhood patterns resurface because many of us learned very early to be responsible before we were ready, to stay quiet to keep things stable, to perform to feel safe, and to tolerate discomfort because that's just how life is. Those adaptations help me survive, but survival strategies don't automatically update when life changes. So in adulthood, they show up as staying in misaligned roles for too long, overriding your intuition, confusing your exhaustion with failure, or equating your endurance to your worth. Nothing was wrong with me, and if you're here, nothing is wrong with you. But my system was doing exactly what it was trained to do, and now it was asking for something different. And this could very well be similar for you. This was the part that no one prepared me for. When I outgrew a life, I didn't automatically land into the next one. I entered what psychology calls the liminal space, the in-between space. The old identity no longer fit, but the new one hadn't fully formed yet. And the liminal spaces are uncomfortable by design. They can feel disorienting and empty. You can feel unproductive. And for me, I had a lot of anxiety because the nervous system prefers certainty, even if that certainty is misaligned. When I was here, part of me wanted to go back. At least that was familiar. At least I knew who I was. In reading a book called The Mountain Is You, which I absolutely love, by the way, it gave me the language for something I previously experienced. The idea that we're often conditioned for comfort and not for happiness, that we tolerate what's familiar even when it no longer fits. That helped me understand why this in between felt so unbearable. But liminal space isn't failure, it is quite actually a transition. And the only way through it is attunement, not force and not pushing. One of the hardest parts of this season can be dealing with the shame because outgrowing a life doesn't come with applause. It comes with questions from others, but then also from yourself. Why can't I just stay? Why isn't this enough? Why do I always want more? What I now know is this: wanting more was not the problem. Staying somewhere my body was rejecting was. Some people are meant to tolerate, others are meant to transform. My ability to stay numb wasn't a flaw, it was clarity. There was one moment when everything shifted, not because I had a plan, not because I knew what was next, but because I finally admitted I'm abandoning myself to keep this life. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. From a therapeutic standpoint, this is where healing actually begins, not in the fixing, but in the truth, stopping the override and starting to listen. For some people, this moment isn't quiet at all. It's loud, it's overwhelming, it's filled with anger and grief, and a kind of certainty that says, I never want to feel this way again. This is what Brianna in The Mountain Is You refers to as rock bottom. It's not a punishment, but it's a turning point. The moment the discomfort of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of change. In systemic therapy, this moment is often understood as second order change, the point where the old system can no longer hold and real transformation becomes possible. This season wasn't asking me to blow up my life overnight. It was asking me to slow down and get honest, to stop calling my intuition anxiety, and to stop calling my exhaustion laziness. Before changing anything externally, I had to learn to attune internally. Awareness before action, regulation before clarity. That's how we come back to ourselves without the panic. And this is what I want to leave you with. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're in a transition. And transitions feel unstable because they ask us to let go of who we were before we fully know who we're actually becoming. So instead of asking, what should I do next? I started sitting with this question: what is my body asking me to stop tolerating? That answer doesn't come from rushing, it comes from actually listening. And if you want support learning how to do that, how to understand your patterns without shaming yourself, how to move through burnout cycles instead of repeating them, and how to choose yourself without burning everything around you down, make sure you subscribe. Because this series is about recognizing the moment you outgrew a version of yourself. And what comes next isn't chaos, it's clarity. It's quiet, it's earned, and it's sustainable. You're not late, you are deserving, and you're right on time.